Welcome to the 6 Miles to Supper podcast. I'm your host, Kayla Cox, and I've lost over 80 pounds with intermittent fasting 6 days a week, eating whatever I wanted at my meals, taking a cheat day every Sunday, and walking 6 miles a day. And I'm here to help you on your weight loss journey. In today's episode, I wanted to talk about the power of taking breaks. And this is an important topic, and it's one that is really near and dear to my heart because it is not in my nature to take breaks. I grew up on a farm, actually many different kinds of farming. My parents, when I first was born, they had a peach orchard, which is very hard work. Then later on, they had a veal farm. And then the bulk of my childhood, though, was spent working on our 3 heavy breeder chicken houses. So it is in my DNA to work really hard, and taking breaks is just not in my nature. It's not a natural thing that I do. And when I first started to come to the idea of it's good to take a break, it's actually more helpful to occasionally rest than it is to just go full speed all the time. That was pretty scary to me. The first way this kind of started happening in my life was back around probably 2010. My husband and I started to have a working 6 days a week rule. So we would take a Sabbath from our work. We had started to do some entrepreneurial things. We had more control over our schedule. And we said, okay, we're just going to make a rule for ourselves that we're going to work 6 days and take the 7th day off. And we did a whole episode about that in our podcast that we did together called Living Outside the Box. So you can take a look at that if you're more interested in the work aspect of it. But, it was scary at first to take that day off. And then when I started to form my own plan for weight loss in 2016, that's when I really came to the idea of a cheat day. I had read about this idea in the 4-Hour Body by Tim Ferriss. And I thought, the idea of taking a day off a week, it seemed kind of at first like that's going to delete all of my progress from the whole week. What's the point of being on plan consistently and then going off plan on that 7th day? It seemed at first like that maybe is like a really bad idea. And, especially because in my mind, I thought, consistency is important. And I'll say it again right now. I would say consistency is the most important thing in the weight loss journey, just being consistent with your plan. I don't care what your plan is. It can be completely different from mine. You could eat 5-6 meals a day and still lose weight. The point is being consistent with your plan. But here's what I found. This taking a break thing works. It helps because it makes it so that you kind of refuel for the next week. What I started to find with our work, when we would take that day off, it would help us to be more productive those other 6 days during the week. And we would get refreshed. And so I thought, it's worth giving this a try. So I thought, okay, I'm going to have my plan B that I do intermittent fasting 6 days a week. But on that 7th day, and this coincided also with my day off from work, I would take the day off from fasting. And I did that. And in 2016, that's when I lost the bulk of my weight. And I kept taking that cheat day, even when I didn't feel like it anymore, because I realized about myself that I have this tendency to work too much, to be to go all the time. And I knew that is such a pattern in my work life that also meant probably in my weight loss journey, that would also be an issue, that I would just, kind of like white knuckle and work too hard. So putting that break in there every week really did help me to stick with things over the long term. And, sometimes people are asking me, well, why do you continue to take a cheat day? Like, do you really need it? No, I don't need it, quote unquote. Like I could do without that day off every week. You can do without it for a while, but what I started to notice was it just made the rest of the week that much easier because I had that one day completely off. It's like a vacation, just one day a week where I don't have to think about things. And I also realized that by doing this, if you do 6 days out of 7 consistently, that means you're doing your plan, quote unquote, 85% of the time. Okay. So like if you are really consistent with this, you say, okay, 6 days a week I'm doing this, I'm taking one day completely off, then your consistency is 85%, which is a passing grade. It's, B plus. So that's a great way to look at it. And for a long time, I did this with everything but walking. Walking was a thing since about 2016 where I would do it consistently 7 days a week. And it was fine. And, in 2017, when I was just in maintenance mode, I experimented with, taking days off from walking or not being consistent with walking. And I found for me, walking was something that really put me in a good mood. At the end of 2017, when I started my YouTube channel, I went back to 7 days a week of walking, and I did that for another year or so. And then when I went into maintenance mode this most recent time, I decided, I'm going to experiment with taking Sunday completely off, meaning I have no step goal that day. I'm not fasting that day, and I'm not working that day. And I just wanted to see how that would work. And I love it. I found that day, just having that day completely off, it like increased my enjoyment of it. It's not just about taking a cheat day or not, or, taking a day off or not. There are a lot of different times in the weight loss journey where a break can be really helpful. For example, vacations. One thing that trips a lot of people up is, what do you do? If you go on vacation, do you stick to your plan? Do you take it completely off? And what do you do? And a lot of people get really afraid. And I know I was really afraid. The first time I went on vacation, I was doing really well on my weight loss journey. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is when it happens, that I'm going to go off plan, and this is where I will gain all the weight, or I will start the process of regaining the weight. And I realized, first of all, because I was taking that cheat day every week, that really when I got back from vacation, it was not going to be any different than my normal Monday morning, because my normal Monday morning is, okay, I had yesterday completely off, and now it's time to get back to it. And my philosophy on vacations is they are meant to be enjoyed to the full. And for me, I've gone on lots of different kinds of vacations, and I've done it every different kind of way. I've found that some vacations, it makes sense to just keep doing, eating one meal a day, because, there are times when, we've been in a place where our schedules are kind of just like, we're just kind of vegging out in front of the TV. We're not really going anywhere. We're not really doing anything. OMAD just works for those times. But then I've had other times where it's like, it makes no sense to do OMAD because my family is going out to breakfast, or we're having lunch out, or we're grabbing ice cream in the middle of the day or in the morning, and I am all about fully enjoying that time. Life to me is about living. And so I am always trying to do that, just to live and enjoy it fully. And that's the whole point for me with weight loss, was just so I could enjoy life more. And sometimes that means not doing intermittent fasting. And vacations can be an interesting thing too, because if you just take the vacation off and you just say, I'm not going to worry about trying to lose weight. I'm not even going to worry about trying to maintain. I may gain a little bit of weight. I'm just going to enjoy this vacation. One thing that can do, having that break from whatever it is you're doing right now, can give you some really good perspective. You can start to see, like, how do I feel when I'm just eating, kind of like with no boundaries, this is like a vacation type thing. It's a small period of time, but, here's what I'm doing, versus how do I feel when I'm intermittent fasting? And having that comparison can actually help it. If you find that you do feel better with intermittent fasting, it can then make intermittent fasting a more well-ingrained habit, because you have that point of reference. You can say, oh, even though I had, no rules during vacation, I didn't feel the best. Or maybe you did. Maybe it can show you like, wow, I'm not feeling too good when I'm doing intermittent fasting this way. And it can teach you about yourself. I've found it's also helpful to sometimes take a break from whatever it is you've been doing for exercise. For example, for a really long time, I was walking 6 miles a day. And, back in, it was the end of April, I started to realize, I had this thing in my head like, I'd like to try running again because I hadn't really run in several years. And the hard part, though, was I had been so consistent with my walking, and it was kind of scary to break that pattern because I thought, what if I start running and then I find out maybe I don't like it or something, and then instead of just going back to walking, I quit everything all at once and I just become sedentary again. And that was a fear I had. But first of all, I realized, well, that's going to be a choice, like I get to choose whether I go back to walking or whether I become sedentary. That is a daily choice. So I got over my fear and I just tried it. For 6 weeks, I said, okay, I'm going to try this running thing. So instead of walking 6 miles a day, I ran 6.25 miles because that was a 10K. And I just did that. I experimented with that. I also started experimenting with taking a day off on Sunday instead of just, running 7 days a week. I thought maybe that's too hard on my body. So I'll try this day off and see how that works. And then, what I ended up coming up with at the end of that experiment was, I don't really enjoy running. I really missed walking, but I wouldn't have known that. I would have always wondered if I didn't take that break and if I didn't try that little experiment. And so, again, I found that it actually made my walking habit a little bit stronger because I started to see, it gave me that perspective shift of, I really do miss it when I don't do it anymore. And it also helped to weed out resentment because what I had started to notice was I was starting to kind of resent the walking because I felt kind of like I couldn't try something else. So once I tried the other thing, I realized I don't really like that thing. And I actually really do like the thing I was doing. But had I not tried that out, I wouldn't have known that. So learning how to take these breaks has really helped me to begin to conquer perfectionism. I like to say I'm a recovering perfectionist because I don't think I have it licked at all. I've made progress, but I have those tendencies. But taking the breaks helps me to realize I don't have to be perfect to get the results I want. And in fact, it's quite freeing to know, I'm only doing this 85% of the time. I'm not perfect, and yet I'm getting the results. Another thing it's taught me is you don't need permission. I think a lot of times we look around and we kind of feel like, there's all these rules I got to follow. And I got to, if you're trying to do this one way of eating, you got to do that way of eating and there is no breaks. But you get to decide that. You get to decide that you're going to take a break for a while or that you're going to, give yourself a 1 day off a week from that type of eating or whatever it is you're doing. You give yourself permission. Nobody's going to sit there and give it to you. And that's quite freeing when you start to take advantage of that. And the thing is, you have to give this to yourself. You have to give yourself the break. It is a gift to yourself. And it's really, I think, a form of self-care. The idea that you're not going to sit there and be a slave driver to yourself all the time, that occasionally you are going to give yourself that break. And what I've found is the more I give myself that gift, the better off I am, the more I actually end up getting accomplished. I know it seems counterintuitive. I think most people would think, no, if you start giving yourself a break, that's when you're going to go off the rails. I've found the opposite is true. When I've not given myself breaks, that's when I end up burning out. But on the other hand, when I've been very gentle with myself and I've given myself breaks and I'm constantly trying to figure out, okay, how can I give myself a little bit more freedom here? That's when I accomplish the most. So I would encourage you right now, if you've been the type in the past to just white knuckle things and you're always focused on being perfect and never taking a break and never giving yourself the day off, try giving yourself just 1 day off a week, just to do what you want to do and to eat how you want to eat and then see how you do and see what that teaches you. Thank you for joining me in this episode, and I'll see you in the next one. Today's episode was brought to you by my book, The Laid Back Guide to Intermittent Fasting, How I Lost Over 80 Pounds and Kept It Off Eating Whatever I Wanted. To get your copy, simply follow the link in the show notes.